Leeds United are set to face off against Sunderland in the Premier League today. It is now today because, okay, not just the baby sort of ruining takes today. It is today at 2 p.m. and it's going to be a fairly interesting one. Sunderland have had a very, very good start to the season. Leeds have had some very, very good form as of late, so I thought I'd have a little bit of a look into the way that Sunderland play, Leeds United's form, how we can match up against the way that they play, and ultimately what we can expect to happen in this match. Before I do so, I'd massively appreciate popping a like on it, subscribing, all that fun stuff. Thank you very much. Anyway, let's dive into it. Sod it, I'll do the same take, I'll just get screamed at by a cat. So, specifically, I took the tactical breakdown on this one from both watching bits of Sunderland and also the BBC tactics correspondent who did a report on Sunderland relatively recently. This is a pretty interesting one, and I will be honest, I'm giving credit because otherwise I wouldn't really have a chance of giving this information properly. So shout out to the BBC on this one. But also, it's a pretty accurate look at the way that they play. So, out of possession, they are a highly aggressive team that like to win the ball back quick. They're one of those sides that think the longer an opponent has possession, the more they're going to be a bit of a threat to us, sort of in the same way that Leeds were last season, where it was a case of if we've got the ball, you can't score goals against us, which completely makes sense. I understand it. And that means they've got a aggressive, highly pressing form of football when they are out of possession, which is something that we really need to keep a little bit of an eye on. In addition to that, it's not just they like to press lots, but they like to target their press. The example that was given in the BBC article, this is why I looked for specific examples, was that when they were playing against Chelsea, they noticed they didn't have any left footed defenders on the pitch. It was all right footed people. So they pressed the left back especially hard because obviously you're going to do that because that left back is going to be a point of vulnerability. They're not going to be able to pass down the line. They'll prefer to go inside. They'll make more mistakes if you force them down the line. That way, they were able to cause some significant problems, and that, I think, is the ultimate benefit of having Reggie Labrie. That's the name of the manager, who is someone that is fairly adaptable when it comes to tactical stuff. When it comes to the sort of more defensive side of things, when they're past the press, the way that they play varies a bit. They can play 4 at the back, they can play 5 at the back. It varies a little bit. More recently, they've gone more towards that 5, but towards the start of the season, and for I'd say 70% of their games, yes, they've played with 4. So that makes it a fairly sort of curious one. The way that they set up might sort of adjust the way that we play, but I'll get into that one a little bit later. Let's go on the keyboard. In possession, they play sort of interesting stuff. So the final third, they like to get players into those crossing areas. They like to whip a ball in because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you can put a ball into the box, you've got a fairly good chance of getting a shot on. Strikers are sort of good at getting on the end of crosses, and if they can get it on target, you can work the goalkeeper. We found this out very, very recently with Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Admittedly, not from open play. That's something that we need to work on, but it's something that Sunderland do as well as us. However, up until the point of being in the final third, they do something interesting with their fullbacks, and they tend to invert them into midfield, which means that they spend a bit more time sort of packing out that midfield. Other sides will struggle to press them because, well, suddenly you've got a left back and a right back in there. There's more passing options for the Sunderland side, which makes it a little bit trickier for a Leeds United team to win the ball back from them. In addition to that, if they're leading a game because this sort of hold on to the ball fairly effectively and then sort of push it out wide, get the crosses in, has worked and they've gone a goal up, that is where they tend to play a lot deeper. This is why the XG numbers aren't quite accurate when it comes to Sunderland, because sure, those are the chances that they've conceded and those are the chances that they've created. But once they score a goal, they will tend to sit a lot deeper and they will look after that lead. They didn't against Newcastle so much, but that's obviously you're not going to do that because it's a rival side and you want to beat them fairly resoundingly. However, against a side like Leeds, if they take the lead, they might think, okay, we can just sit in, Leeds aren't going to create too much, so we need to make sure that doesn't happen. And when it comes to what we need to do, there's a few curious things. I think there's a strong argument for a 5-3-2, because that means we can sort of overload that back line if they play with 4 at the back. That way, 2 strikers to 2 centre-backs, you're at the very least pinning a midfielder back, making sure that they need to think about what's going on. So if a centre-back loses their battle, things don't fall apart at the back. However, if it comes to that midfield overload, maybe going to that 5-2-2-1 is going to be the better approach, because that way you've got your 5, which is wing-backs, centre-backs as the defensive line. Wing-backs can come inside and support the midfield, and also your 2 attacking midfielders can drop in, which means that effectively, if you sort of balance things right, you can have 5 or 6 players in the middle of the park winning the ball back from that Sunderland midfield effort. For me, that sort of balance means that the lineup kind of has to stay the same as it was. The controversial one that had Brendan Aronson in it. Because if you set out with the sort of initial 5-2-3 kind of look, 5-2-2-1 with Perry in goal, obviously, I think he's done really well recently. Beale, Strauch and Rodon as your centre-backs, with Bogle and Gudmundsson as your wing-backs. A midfield of Tanaka and Stack, Ampadu and Stack, I read that wrong. Okafor and Aronson is your attacking midfielders, and then DCL up top. If it comes to it and they are playing 4 at the back, you can always drop Aronson in as a sort of attacking 8, a number 10, but a little bit deeper kind of thing. And then you've got your 2 strikers who are able to do that job. In addition to that, something that I want to see us do again, so long Iris, is if you end up playing Jayden Bogle and sort of as that aggressive wing back, and you end up putting Aronson more central, we can again do that Rodon at right back thing, because I think that really worked in the last match, and it gives them something to think about, because normally you're not thinking a centre back's just going to pop up as a wing back, but if you do that, you overload their fullbacks. That's ultimately something that I think we would benefit quite a lot from. When it comes to what we're expecting for a result from this one, I think to get something we need to bring a lot of intensity. I think we need to sort of force the issue quite a lot. And I think at the end of the day, we might need a little bit of luck. Sunderland are where they are on merit, but also they've had a little bit of fortune swinging in their direction as the season has gone. If we can get that little bit of fortune, if we can... I'm going to have to do a nappy change after I record this. But if we can bring the intensity, get a little bit of luck, and play the tactical game right, there's no reason that we can't come out of this, not only with the unbeaten run held together, but with all 3 points. We might have to get a little bit lucky. Calvert-Lewin might have to do his magic thing again. But I think we've got this. For me, I'm going to go with a 2-2 draw. I'm not going to be confident enough to say that we'll win, although, let's be honest, 15 minutes before the match starts, when I'm over on Big Up with Joe, you should go over there. I will undoubtedly be saying 2-0 Leeds, it's great, because that's how confidence works. But I think effort is what will matter here, and right now we've got a team that is willing to put a hell of a lot of effort into winning a game of football. But, as always, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Also, let me know if you managed to spot the Easter egg that I put in this video, because I noticed a thing, and I was like, ooh, I can do a thing with the thing. Also subscribe, that's great. Or become a channel member, that's fun as well. But I'm going to leave that there, because she's starting to smell. So, hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you later. Toodaloo.